Hello and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk all about how I became a college and professional soccer player, and I'm going to give you some practical tips on what you should do if that's something that you're trying to do too. If you're new here, my name is Brittany Eisenhower. I played Division I college soccer at the University of Denver and professional soccer in the NWSL for Angel City FC and the Orlando Pride. And if I could go back and talk to my younger self and tell her that I actually accomplished my dreams of becoming a college athlete, becoming a professional soccer player, I probably wouldn't believe it, but I really did learn so much along the way, overcame so many obstacles, fear, doubt, and I got to accomplish my dreams. And I want to share those tips that I have with you. So hopefully we can do that today. So going all the way back to the beginning, I started playing soccer around 3 or 4 years old. I just had a ton of energy. And so I think my parents knew they needed to put me in a sport of some kind. Neither of my parents played sports themselves, but I think everybody pretty much plays soccer at a young age. So they thought, let's try it. And all I remember about that time was just being extremely competitive. I took these games so seriously. And I don't think my parents ever put pressure on me my entire career, but I always put pressure on myself. And like I said, I took every single game of my career so seriously. As I grew up, I just kept playing soccer because that's what I did. And I think I got a little bit lucky because my mom worked with someone else who had their daughter on a soccer team that was really good. So I ended up joining this team, and I feel like all I remember from this time is that the team I joined was so good. I was not even necessarily that good at the time, but we just kept winning. So I think it gave me a little bit of confidence. I thought I was such a good soccer player. At the time, I remember struggling a little bit because I was brave, I was strong, I was pretty athletic, but I was a little bit clumsy and not necessarily the most technical person on the team. And I couldn't really keep up with all the running that everybody else was doing. My face would get bright red. So when it became time to pick a goalkeeper for the team, I was the select. And honestly, I was pretty stoked about this when I learned that I got to wear a cool jersey and cool gloves and jump in front of the ball and jump on the ground. I was sold. So let's just say I was a natural born goalkeeper, which means I'm a little bit crazy. There's a screw loose somewhere in there. If you're a goalkeeper, you know. When it came time to try out for my first ever competitive team, my parents, my coaches, my teammates were all telling me that I was going to make the top team, but for some reason in my head, I just did not believe it. I remember being so nervous for this tryout that I made myself sick, but I did end up making the team. So I played my youth career for Real Colorado National. We ended up joining ECNL, but I don't think at the time ECNL existed yet. I'm really aging myself with that one. I feel like up until competitive soccer, you just kind of play for fun. Like I said, I was always really competitive, so I took it seriously up until then. But making this team made me take it a whole lot more seriously. This brings me to my very first tip for you. When I started playing on this team, I started doing a lot more training on my own outside of the normal team training. Because I was a goalkeeper, a couple times a week, I would have a one-on-one session with a goalkeeper coach. And doing this really helped just accelerate my growth. I do want to acknowledge that not everyone can do this because we know one-on-one lessons cost money, but I was very grateful that my mom made this a priority for me because I think it helped me so much. But even if this is something that you can't do, focus on what you can do. I still remember after I did team training, after I did the one-on-one goalkeeper training, whenever I was bored, I would pick up a ball in my basement and just hit it against the concrete wall, work on my touch. I would juggle for hours until I got blisters on my toes. It didn't matter what I was working on, what skill I was doing. I was just obsessed and I just always wanted to be playing soccer. As a pro soccer player, I would always get questions from parents or players who wanted to make it to that level. And the question they would ask me is, how many hours a day should I be training? And I really struggle to answer this question because I think obviously the quality of training sessions vary. So 1 hour at a good training session could be totally different than 3 hours at a poor one. But when it comes down to it, what I really want to say is you just have to kind of be obsessed, which I don't think that you can teach. For me, I really just always wanted to be playing soccer. And I think there's always something that you can be doing. You don't have to be running and sprinting and making yourself exhausted at a training session. If you get home from training and you have some free time, you can go hit the ball against the wall. You can juggle. You can get better at these skills pretty much at all times. But what can't be taught is just an obsession and a desire to get better every single day. And if you feel like you're a player who maybe doesn't have this mindset, maybe you're lacking motivation, I feel like one of the things that made me obsess and constantly want to work to get better was learning about other players. I was obsessed with Mia Hamm and Hope Solo growing up. And I vividly remember that in fourth grade, I did a project on Mia Hamm. So I had to research her, I had to read her books, I had to read articles about her. And what I remember is this story about her work ethic when no one was watching. I don't remember the exact details, but basically, when everyone was done with training, when they went home, when no one was there, Mia would be there running sprints, working on her footwork, training on her own. She was just obsessed. And learning this, knowing that she was one of the best soccer players in the entire world, I thought to myself, well, if that's somewhere that I want to be, I better start acting like that. And that brings me to tip number 2. The key to getting to where you want to be, to achieving your dreams, is to act like the person that you want to become. So for me, that was constantly thinking about the story of Mia Hamm working hard when no one was watching. And over time, through taking action, that actually became part of my identity and who I thought of myself as through competitive soccer all the way up to professional soccer. And I really think that mentality served me well. And that's why I post on social media. That's why I'm posting this YouTube video for you right now, is because I'm no Mia Hamm, but maybe you can hear this story and be inspired and motivated to just work hard every single day. So like I said, I played for Real Colorado ECNL my entire career. We made it to the national champions twice, but we never won it. I got a few call-ups to the US youth national teams, and a question that I always get is, how do you get noticed by the youth national team scouts? And I think it might be different for everyone. Obviously, I think it's important to be playing on a top team and being a top player on those teams. But for me, I think it was because my goalkeeper coach at my club at the time had a relationship with the youth national team and kind of recommended me for the youth national team camp. And unfortunately, I have a horror story from this camp, but it actually turned out good. So just wait and hear this. When I went to my first ever national team camp, I had never really run fitness before. I just kind of played goalkeeper. And I show up to this camp and they have fitness testing the first day. So we have a beep test, a jump test, a couple of other tests, and I end up failing every single fitness test. I was so embarrassed. I went home, I cried a little bit, but then I called my coach at home and asked if he knew any strength coaches, conditioning coaches in the area. And I started working really, really hard on my fitness. It did not happen overnight. I'd say it probably took over 4 years of working really, really hard, but fitness actually became one of my strengths. That brings me to tip number 3, which is focus on what you can control and work really, really hard at it. As athletes and as humans, there is so much that is not within our control, and it's easy to obsess over those things. But if you can obsess over the things that are within your control, it's going to be your key to success. So for me, I knew my fitness was within my control. I knew that it's not going to happen overnight and it's going to be really painful. But if I work on my fitness, it could become one of my strengths. And I tried to take this mentality that I learned every single day with me to practice and in games. I can't control the weather. I can't control the drill that coach chooses to do. Sometimes I can't control results, but I tried to focus on the things that were within my control. And those things were always hard work, having a good mentality, and learning from my mistakes. And trust me, I was not perfect. There were days where I'm sure I was exhausted and I didn't give 100%. There were days where I probably had outbursts and didn't treat my teammates the way that they should be treated. So don't worry if you make a mistake, but really try to come back to focusing on what you can control. Moving on to the college recruiting process, which at the time was terrifying for me. I was a freshman in high school, and I remember thinking I had so much time. But then I saw teammates and friends committing to colleges, and suddenly I felt like I was behind. One of my friends who went to my school actually just committed to Stanford for soccer. And so I asked her, like, what should I be doing right now? And her advice was to make a list of the top 25 schools that I might be interested in and try to email those coaches. And in the email, include things about you like stats or achievements from your soccer career, but also include why you might be a good fit for their specific program. I feel like coaches can tell when you just copy and paste these emails with information about you over and over. But if you can add something specific about their program or about why you'd be a good fit for their program, it helps you stand out from the crowd. So I think these emails helped. I got a couple of responses, a little bit of interest, But I think what helps even more is having a club coach that has connections with college coaches. My first two unofficial visits were to CU Boulder and the University of Denver. And long story short, I ended up verbally committing to the University of Denver by the end of my freshman year of high school. Now, the rules on recruiting and committing have totally changed. You definitely can't commit this early anymore. But I think the tips still stand, and I think it's good to start early, to start thinking about the colleges you might be interested in, making a list, trying to start to form these connections. You kind of have to be an advocate for yourself during this process, so it can never hurt to at least start thinking about the process early. So I ended up playing all 4 years of my college career at the University of Denver, and my coach made me a captain of my team the spring season of my sophomore year. The reason I think my coach did this was because, like I said, I valued hard work. I would always show up on time, do the right things, put my head down. But the part of leadership that I was missing at the time was the connection with my teammates. I was so focused on the soccer and performance aspect, which is obviously important, that I kind of forgot that we're all humans at the end of the day, and people only care about how much you know when they know how much you care. And that is another tip for you that I learned during my career that will serve you so well on your soccer career. If you have a good culture and you have a good team, it doesn't matter how great of a player you are. If you treat your teammates poorly or you don't form these connections, it's going to hurt your career. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but I've had teammates, even at the professional level, where they're amazing soccer players, probably the most gifted players on the team. But after some time of them treating their teammates poorly or having a bad attitude, they've been so bad for the culture that ultimately they get dropped from the team or traded away. So being a good person, having a good attitude, treating your teammates well, they're all super, super important qualities. And I wasn't always the best teammate because I used the excuse of being competitive as a rationale for treating my teammates poorly or sometimes having a bad attitude. But thankfully, I feel like I learned that lesson. I definitely wasn't perfect after I learned the lesson either, but it's a really, really important lesson to learn. Around my junior and senior year of college, I started to think that it might be a realistic goal to try to become a professional soccer player. So I sat down with my assistant coach and he helped me make a highlight reel and also a CV, which is kind of just a soccer resume of all your accomplishments. I sent those things out to professional coaches, and then before I knew it, draft day came after my senior year of college. I was actually training during the draft. I had the draft on my phone and I turned it up loud on the speaker, so I was listening to it while I was training. And it was probably the worst training session that I ever had in my entire life. And the draft ends and my name was not called. I was pretty devastated. I wondered if I would even get a chance to even try out for one of these teams. But then I got a call from the Orlando Pride saying that they picked me up as their discovery player. So basically what that means is it's really similar to a draft pick where the Orlando Pride then owned the first rights to offer me a contract. So I couldn't go to any other team, but they weren't offering me a contract. So I move out to Orlando with a couple of suitcases. I'm basically on an extended tryout. I wasn't getting paid, so I'd train in the morning and coach in the evening. And I walk into this locker room with players that I've looked up to my entire life. Marta, Alex Morgan, Ashlyn Harris. And I start to wonder if I could make it, if I belong here. But again, even through all this uncertainty, I tried to focus on what I could control. I couldn't control what my teammates or coaches were thinking. I couldn't control when they were going to offer me a contract. But what I could control was my work ethic, how I was showing up every day, showing up prepared, showing up professional, proving to the coaches and to myself that I belong at this level. So my next tip for you is that professionalism matters. Showing up early, being a self-starter, and warming up before coach tells you to. Even little things like making eye contact, shaking the coach's hand, talking to them like a human. All these things are a great way to show confidence and that you're a professional and you're going to show up and be a professional every single day. And my last story for you was from this trial period. We had an inter squad, which is basically where the team is split up into two and you scrimmage each other. And I knew that this was a pretty big moment to show how I showed up in games, and I was playing pretty good. I was proud of it. And then all of a sudden I get a pass back. I try to connect the pass to my outside back, I believe, and the pass gets picked off and the other team almost scores. So this was obviously not a great moment, but a couple moments later, I get the ball back, the exact same ball. I see my outside back open and I try the exact same pass. And this time I execute it perfectly. After the game, obviously I was thinking about my mistake, but my coach comes up to me and tells me that he wasn't worried about the mistake I made. He was more impressed with how I responded to it, that I was brave and that I tried it again. So my final lesson for you is that you are never going to be defined by just your mistakes, but you are going to be defined by how you react to them. No one in history has ever played a perfect game. You're going to make mistakes, but if you are ruminating on them, you're not going to be focused on the next play. And something that's more impressive than a player trying to play perfect, which often leads to them playing small, is a player who's not afraid to take calculated risks and learn from their mistakes. The only way you're ever going to learn, ever going to grow, is to learn from your mistakes. When mistakes happen, they suck, they feel horrible, but it's actually the best moment for growth. I ended up playing professional soccer at the Orlando Pride for 2 years and Angel City FC for 2 years, and it was a great experience. If becoming a college or professional soccer player is your dream, let me know any questions that you have in the comments, and I'll try to answer them in future videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.